Welcome Bronco Nation to my review of Boise State versus Nevada game. As you can tell, a little bit of different setup here today. I am on the road, that's why this video is coming out so late. So I'm not in my usual studio setup, but we're going to make it work. So we're going to go through the offense, the defense, the special teams today. We're going to review how each of these units performed. We're going to look at the game overall, and we're also going to look at my three keys to the game and how Boise State performed against those. Boise State is off to a 2-3 start, the first time since 2001 that they have started a season 2-3. That was, of course, before Boise State had kind of entered into the area. The next year was much better. Boise State made a name for themselves moving forward in the WAC and in the Mountain West. But Boise State, this is not the Boise State team of 2001. This is not a team coming into, at that point, it's, 1996, so it's sixth FBS season. Did I do the math right? Fifth FBS season there. So this is not a Boise State team coming into, their first initial FBS seasons. This is a Boise State team that has established themselves as the top, or one of the top, especially over the last few years with the rise of other top group of five teams, but as the top or one of the top group of five teams in the nation. This is a Boise State team that expects to win against anybody they play, but they especially expect to win in conference. Boise State has traditionally, since those early 2000 seasons, especially moving up into the memorable 2002, 2003, 2004, back-to-back WAC champions, Boise State expects to dominate within conference. And a loss to Nevada like this hits differently than the previous two losses. Loss to UCF, they're a really good team. They have a potential Heisman dark horse candidate. At the time, he's injured now. But on their roster, Boise State goes in, plays it close, loses. Oklahoma State, Big 12 team. Boise State still expects to win at home, but it's a Big 12 team. Things don't work out. Boise State loses by 1 point. Fans move on, going into the non-conference. Nevada at home, a team that Boise State has over the last few years been very dominant against, a team that has beat Boise State in the past, but a home game against Nevada. Boise State, I believe, has not lost. I know they haven't lost in the modern 2000 era. I believe the last loss was in 98 or 97, but Boise State has not lost to Nevada at home in the modern era of college football since 2000. Of course, the memorable loss in 2010, but has not lost at home against Nevada, a team that doesn't lose at home very often. Now, before we get started on this, it needs to be said that this is a very good Nevada team. I said coming into this one, this was the best team, best Nevada team that I've seen since Colin Kaepernick played for them. And lo and behold, that was the last time Boise State lost when Colin Kaepernick was at the helm. So this is Carson Strong is he's not a shoo-in necessarily for it, but he is being considered as a first-round draft pick by many boards. He's very, very, very efficient quarterback. The Nevada team overall, they're very, as Boise State saw it themselves, they are a complete team. Offense, defense, even down to their special teams. I mean, their field goal kicker was amazing during this game. They are a complete team that, if Boise State can make it to, and it's a big if at this point, but if Boise State can make it to the Mountain West Championship game, this is the team that Boise State could end up facing. I mean, they're already off to a 1-0 start here with a big win against us to open up their conference season. That West Division is difficult, but this is a very, very good Nevada team. So before we get into this isn't Boise State losing to New Mexico at home. This isn't Boise State losing to middle-of-the-tier San Diego State team at home. This is Boise State losing to a very, very good Nevada team at home who was competitive in their game against Kansas State, but is undefeated besides that, and has a win over Cali to start the year against Power 5 school. So this is not Boise State fans. We should be upset by this, but we shouldn't necessarily be shocked. I'm seeing on the page, on the Boise State Bronco Nation page, tons of people going on there saying, Andy Avalos isn't the guy. He needs to be fired. He proves he doesn't have it. We're 5 games in to the first season with a completely new coaching staff, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, multiple different position group coaches throughout the entire. I mean, this is a complete coaching staff, and understand that this is also not Andy Avalos' players. These are Brian Harson's players that Andy Avalos is working with. And the last couple of years, Boise State's recruiting has declined over the last 3 years. So this is a head coach who's coming in and working with someone else's guys and who is trying to put in his system. Now, I'm not saying that the guys that Boise State has are bad. They're not. But they're recruited for Harson's offense. Harson was a great coach, and Andy Avalos can be a great coach for Boise State. But he has to bring in his guys that fit into his mindset and his vision of what he wants to do with this team. And Boise State still is trying to figure out what exactly that vision looks like. But it will become more clear with a couple of recruiting classes under Avalos' belt when he's be able to bring in his style of guys who are going to play to his play type, especially Tim Plow's play type, with more of an air raid focus. So this is, you can't, a loss like this, it is going to be on the team and it's going to be on the head coach. But Boise State fans, to go out there and call for Andy Avalos to be fired after 5 games in, it's been a disappointing set. But Boise State has been close in these games where this is a rebuilding year. And I think Bronco Nation, I think Boise State fans, they're not used to rebuilding years. They're used to having perennial success year after year after year. But this is the first time that we've brought in a head coach who wasn't on the staff previously or recently from the previous transition. I mean, Chris Peterson took over. He was the offensive coordinator, and he took over under Dan Hawkins. And then Brian Harson had only a few years ago been the offensive coordinator, and he'd been the offensive coordinator during the memorable Fiesta Bowl wins. And also, he had been a head coach previously. So while he didn't necessarily come straight up through the coaching tree, he had been on the Boise State staff previously, and he had been a head coach. Well, this is the first time that Boise State has not had a coach come in who was either on the team the year before or had been a head coach previously. This is Andy Avalos' first year as a head coach. It's also Tim Plow's first year, and this also defensive coordinator. The two main coordinator positions, their first years coaching at their coordinator position in the FBS. There's a lot of transition going on. It's also a team that struggled last year, an offensive line that looked terrible last year and is looking the same this season, a defensive line that was really trying to get itself together, defense overall that I think is playing better than last year. So this is not when Chris Peterson took over from Dan Hawkins, there was struggles there on that team, especially from that 2005 season. But most of those players were also from the 2004 season, where Boise State had gone undefeated up to the bowl game. And when Brian Harson took over, they'd had an 8-5 season that year, but he was also taking over a team, the defense that was dominant under Chris Peterson, even though they did end up losing a lot of games. They were very, very good defense. There were top-tier players on that roster. It was a team that not that long ago had been competitive for Fiesta Bowls, and who had one loss, 2 loss seasons. That is not the team that Andy Avalos is taking over. This is a Boise State team that has been on a slight downward trend. Slight, not significant, but has been on a slight downward trend, and it's a Boise State team that is having to adjust to a completely new field. The coach, Andy Avalos, he's a Boise State guy, true blue. He's played for Boise State, he's coached for Boise State, but he's never been a head coach for them, and he wasn't involved the last few seasons with this team. He's still trying to figure out what these guys can do for him, and he hasn't yet brought in the guys that are going to fit his mindset. Andy Avalos, you can write this down, in 2 seasons, potentially next year, but at least in 2 seasons, so 3rd year of his coachship, Boise State is going to be the top team in the group of 5. We are going to see Boise State return to being a perennial top 20, inching up towards the top 10 team like they were in years past. He can do that for us. He's already shown it with how much with the team that he took over, and with the staff that is still developing themselves. They are way ahead of schedule. I mean, that, like I said, against that Oklahoma State game, to only lose by 1 point in a game that they were right in till the very end, that they could have won against Oklahoma State this early in their coachship. I mean, Boise State has lost by basically only a few plays in 2 of their games. I mean, that they had an absolute chance to win the UCF game, and they were in that Oklahoma State game with a chance to win. And if if not for referee call, would have won that game. And then in this game, Boise State, especially, and we're going to get into the review, but there was a lot of things in this game that Boise State just kind of the luck went against them. So that's what this story tells me in this game. This was a tale of two halves, and it was really a tale of the luck going wrong. And we're gonna talk about that. I'm not saying that Boise State lost because of chance. Now, there was a lot of things Boise State did wrong, a lot of things trends that finally caught up to them in this game, but for those of you who are going out there and calling for Andy Avalos' head after 5 games in his first season, we knew this was going to be a tough one coming in. Now, I thought that with Boise State, with the not necessarily the depth overall in the different positions, but some of the star players, and with a couple coaching changes, I figured that Boise State could still go 10-2. But I said if they lose that game to UCF, and you guys heard me in my preview of the season, I said if they drop that first game to UCF, then they were going to lose 4, maybe 5 games this season. And we're already seeing that. They're already 3 losses in. Next week, top 10 team in BYU, that could be another loss. Boise State fans, we have to be in for the long ride. We know it's going to be a shaky season. We knew that coming in, at least the ones who are being realistic. We knew that it was potential to be a very shaky season coming into this one. And we've got to give this coaching staff time. We have to play the long game. Boise State is going to be able to return to where they were before, to being a top dominant team in the group of 5, but it takes time. These things don't come overnight. So Boise State, a tough one. We're going to get into the loss here, but I just wanted to give some perspective on this season overall. It's also, and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but real quick, this is also the toughest Mountain West schedule that I've seen Boise State play in maybe ever. I mean, this maybe going back to 2010, Nevada was really good, but the rest of the teams weren't really that good. This is one of the toughest Mountain West schedules that I have ever seen Boise State play. I mean, you have Mountain West teams in Fresno State, San Diego State, and Nevada. All 3 of those teams deserve to be ranked, even though Fresno State lost to Hawaii. All 3 of those teams deserve to be ranked. Hawaii is really good. Air Force is off too. I believe right now they're 4-1. Yeah, they're 4-1 right now with. And they're off to a huge start. Wyoming so far is undefeated. This is an incredibly tough Mountain West schedule. Mountain West has been the top, I believe, and the stats show it too, even though the nation hasn't seen it because of East Coast bias. But the Mountain West has been the top Group of 5 conference for the last 4 or 5 years, but this year the nation is taking notice, because not only are they top Group of 5 conference, but they are beyond what they would even have been normally. I mean, this is a Mountain West team that is going out there and beating Power 5 teams that has top first round draft potential across the conference. This is an incredibly talented conference on a year that Boise State is going through changeover, on a rebuild year. It's a perfect storm for a imperfect season. So Boise State fans and coaching staff and players, they need to have the patience to stick with this team. This same roster could have huge success later this season and even next year if players decide to stick around. Once Andy Avalos is able to install his vision in this team, and the success levels, that the ceiling for this team, once Andy Avalos starts bringing in his caliber play, his type of players that fit into his vision for this program, the ceiling for this team, it's endless. This team can return to the Boise State years that we saw in the past when Boise State played on this field, which is this is the 2002 to 2007. I also have the 2008 through 2014, or no, it was recently when they tore it up. So 2019's turf. So Boise State can return to the level of playing that they were on this turf and that turf. Boise State can return to that level of play. Boise State is not that far off. They are returning. We are seeing a gradual uptick under Andy Avalos here, even if they're dropping games that they normally wouldn't. We are seeing a team that is playing so aggressive across the defensive across the defense. We are seeing a team that is playing more innovative and explosive on the offense than I've seen them in a long time. Even if the offensive line is really crippling that effort, the offensive play calling is very dynamic and innovative, something we really didn't see the last few years. And it's a team that is moving in the right direction. It's 13 minutes of kind of putting a framework on this before we talk about this loss. But I think that's important to analyze this loss in the right perspective. So let's get right into it. So as far as the offense goes, it was a tale of 2 halves and of luck gone wrong. So Boise State in the first half had several moments that could have been disastrous. Blindside blitz on Hank that almost was fumbled. I mean, he was a complete blindside blitz that was on the first half, got just slammed to the turf. I don't know how he held on to the ball. Boise State at one point had 5 blockers, and 3 of them still got through right up the middle. This was on the first drive. 3 of them still got through right up the middle and then was forced to punt. But then Nevada ended up jumping off sides. Boise State got lucky on it. Nevada jumped off sides, and Boise State was able to maintain the drive, which ended in a touchdown. Lucky moment again. So lucky not to fumble on that first blindside blitz. Lucky to get the punt. And then Boise State also on that same drive had a pass by Hank Bachmeier, which was ill-advised, which should have been picked, which it was Evans who caught. No, it was Cobbs. Cobbs managed to make the catch, sparked the drive, and was able to take Boise State down the field for an eventual touchdown that he ended up putting in. So Boise State. Oh, sorry, it was Evans. It was Evans on that one. So Cobbs had the touchdown, but Evans made that catch on that Hank Bachmeier threw that ball. It was ill-advised. The defender was right on Evans. The ball was a little short of Evans, and he still managed to out-muscle the defender, catch the ball, spin off the tackle, and go for a big run to spark that first drive. So a tale of first half luck. Boise State also had 2 terrible snaps. The bad snaps finally caught up to Boise State. We saw that last game against Utah State, just a ton of terrible snaps that Hank Bachmeier managed to corral. Well, this time there were 2 snaps that did not end up that way, that really killed the drives that they happened on. A snap over his head that he managed to jump on. Again, lucky that wasn't a turnover. And then one that rolled along the ground that he also managed to jump on. Again, lucky that wasn't a turnover. So Boise State had, if I'm counting this correctly, Boise State really had 3 potential turnovers in the first half that were avoided, and they also had a first down given to them that they did not earn, that they should not have got, that they were able to then turn into a touchdown. So if those go, turnovers are always usually 50-50. If those go the other side of the 50, Boise State is looking at maybe not even scoring in the first half. They don't get that first touchdown, and then they have those 2 big turnovers. Maybe the score 7-20 there in the first half. But other than that, Boise State is not in this thing like they were in the first half, if for those turnovers. Now, there were also some incredible plays in that first half. I mean, Shakir he's been incredible all season, and he is making his name as a potential first-round pick in the way that he's playing. He's probably second round is much more likely just based on his size, but he is just an incredible talent. I mean, we saw this in his previous seasons. We knew that he could do this. I always said that he was kind of a combination in my mind of Titus Young and Austin Pez. He had the reliable hands of Austin Pez, but then the juking and maneuverability of Titus Young. But he's showing that I think he's even beyond those 2 players in his caliber of play. I mean, 2 amazing one-handed grabs, one of them for a touchdown. SportsCenter top 10 type caliber plays. Just amazing plays by Shakir. Bachmeier also, when he wasn't getting sacked or mishandling the fumbles, well, not mishandling the snaps, not his fault on that offensive snapping, the center's fault on those snaps. When he wasn't having those issues, he was actually looking pretty good. I mean, he did have a grounding call against him. That was a bad decision, but he was going through his reads. He was 13 of 17 in the first half for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, for a 76% completion percentage. He looked really, really good out there. A couple of big throws for touchdowns to, notably the first one on the first drive to Evans, then also the one-handed catch by Shakir. So he was looking very, very, very good in the first half. And then the second half rolled around. Second half, that's when the tail turned. Sorry, before I move on to the second half, I also want to talk about the first half. The running game looked really, really good in the first half. And a big part of that was Holani. Holani finally had 4 carries for 27 yards in the first half before he appeared to be injured. And I think that his absence in the second half was a big part of the reason that Boise State didn't look quite on cue as they did in the first half. Now, Cyrus did a nice job picking up for Holani in the second half. I believe he had 19 yards rushing in the second half there for a total of 46. But Holani looked like the Holani of 2019 in the first half. The way that he was running, the way that he was the power and the speed and maneuverability that Helani was attacking the line in the first half. I mean, the first play was a 6-yard carry. I mean, that was Boise State has never opened up the game with a 6-yard carry like that. So Boise State actually had a running game in this one in the first half that they were really pursuing, and Helani was a big part of that. And I think his injury, tell of the luck, really kind of shifted the Boise State focus in the second half. Now, let's talk about the flip of the other side of the coin, the other 50-50 when the luck didn't go against Boise. Boise State, we talked about that blindside blitz that on Hank that almost turned into a fumble in the first half. Well, that was a fumble in the second half. So completely the same play, parallel plays. One not a fumble. Boise State's able to maintain a drive for a touchdown. One a fumble. Critical mistake for Boise State. Boise State also had a fumble by Cobbs that was kind of a fluke. I mean, he was running. He had made a big catch, and it was maneuvering down the field. He'd played great all game, but just didn't cover up the ball at the end as he tried to make a juke move. Ball gets knocked out, intentionally so, by Nevada. Nevada played really well at trying to force these fumbles in the second half. Got that. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bunch of texts here. Turn on my side there. Boise State. So Cobbs fumbles that ball, which kills that drive and turns into points for Nevada. And then Boise State also, of course, this was really when we talk about wild luck, about weird coincidence. Boise State, because it's not the right word, but just wild luck here, or missed luck against Boise State. A pass by Bachmeier, only interception of the game. Pass by Bachmeier right into the hands, great pass, right to C.T. Thomas that he had. And this is a receiver who was so reliable last year, who struggled this season but looked better last week. Right to C.T. Thomas, which he bobbles in the air, hits him right in the chest, isn't able to maintain hold of it. We were always told about when we went in high school, and this was in high school, was never catch the ball with your body, because that's what's going to happen when you catch the ball with your body. There's too much there. You've got your chest plate there, and you're not. The ball's going to just bounce around. You got to catch it with your hands. You got to reach out. You got to catch with your hands. That's the only reliable way to catch a pass, because there's not. When you catch with your body, there's just too much that can go wrong. And C.T. Thomas hit off of his just below the pads right there, bounced off, wasn't able to corral it, threw it in the air, basically intercepted by Nevada, which then, of course, turned into points for them right there in Boise State's territory. So really a tale of first halves, and it wasn't necessarily that Boise State was doing anything differently. Bachmeier got sacked the same way as he did in the first half, turns into a fumble in the second half. Boise State receivers making plays down the field, ends up getting one punched out. Bachmeier throwing the ball all over the place, weird interception that goes the other way. So it really was a tale of two halves there, but not necessarily a tale of two different performances, more of a tale of just things that could have gone bad in the first half not happening, and all of those things, if it can go bad, it will, happening in the second half. So in between all this, Boise State still had some really good plays. Boise State was able to drive down the field, get that touchdown to kind of stay in the game there in the fourth quarter. But even on that was still, in my mind, even though it was a successful drive, it was still in the situation very negative play, because Boise State took 4 minutes and 54 seconds in that final fourth quarter drive to try and get the game within 2 possessions. Boise State went down and it took them 4 minutes and 54 seconds. They did not seem to be playing with urgency. And another thing here, which really does at this point reflect on the coaching staff. I've had a lot of positive things to say about this coaching staff, but Boise State's players looked extremely tired and fatigued in that drive. Usually when you have a long drive like that, it's the defense that looks fatigued. Boise State actually had to call a timeout because their offense was so tired, and they had to give them kind of a break so they could punch in the score for the touchdown. So Boise, it was not necessarily bad game management. I think they wanted to play with a sense of urgency. They just couldn't play with a sense of urgency because their players were so tired. And that goes to the conditioning and to this being a young coaching staff still trying to figure out what they want to do with this team and how they need to do that. And that is really, it's a knock against the coaching staff that Boise State's offense was not able to be at a level of play, conditioning-wise, to be able to drive down and to punch this in. Now, part of that also goes to lack of depth across key positions, specifically on a very, very depleted offensive line. So, part of that's not necessarily the coaching staff's fault because they still haven't brought in their players, but it is Boise State's fault that they weren't able to be playing at a level and intensity that they could get this down. 2-minute offense. That's what Boise State should have had in their mind. 2-minute offense, go down. It doesn't matter if you score if you're then forced to go into onside kicks, which have less than a 50% chance. I mean, I don't remember what the stat is. I remember the NFL stat was like less than 15% of onside kicks are recovered, something like that. I'm not sure what the college one is, but the Boise, when you're relying on onside kicks, you've basically given up the game at that point anyway. If you want to play to win, it doesn't matter if your players are tired. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter if you are throwing up balls that have a 50% chance. If you've got to go for that 50-50 ball, because if you're going for an onside kick, that's less than a 50-50 ball. Boise State needed to play for a scenario where they could kick the ball away, get the ball back and score, and maybe only have to go for one onside kick at the end, if even that, if they were able to force a couple 3-and-outs. So Boise State really kind of dropped the ball here in the second half. A lot of things went wrong that should have gone wrong in the first half that did go wrong in the second half, and then just a lack of urgency there for a really kind of a negative mark against this program that was playing really well overall, despite some of those mistakes in the first half. Bachmeier in the second half, 21 of 30, so 13 of 17, only 4 misses in the first half, 9 misses in the second half, a couple of balls that were very, very catchable, or not catchable, sorry, a couple of wide receivers that were very, very open that he should have hit, which he threw high. Bachmeier played great in the first half, but in the second half he only had 185 yards passing, which is still good, but he should have been so much more. I was marking him down. He had 3 wide open receivers that he completely overthrew. And Bachmeier, on the first half, despite the pressure, despite what was going on, he looked very, very calm. He looked like he was going through his reads. He looked under control. Not so in the second half. Not going through his reads as well, overthrowing his receivers. And that's another thing for Bachmeier here is, like I've said in my other videos, Bachmeier, incredible talent. I'm not jumping off the Bachmeier train. I still think he's the quarterback for Boise State, but in late game situations, he tries, especially when the clock's against him, when the scenario's against him. Boise State's, they're already starting to go downhill with some of these fumbles and turnovers. He starts to try and put it all on his shoulders, and he starts to try and push the ball downfield. And he does, and he goes away. He's a great quarterback. He's a great quarterback with great skills, great talent, but he goes away from his game management, from the cerebral side of the game, and tries to put it all on his arm. Bachmeier, he needs to figure out a way, this coaching staff needs to figure out a way to calm him down in the second half, because even though he's a great player, even though he is top, when you look statistically, he's one of the top quarterbacks in college football right now. Statistically, completions, yards, and touchdowns. He's one of the top quarterbacks, but most of those stats are coming from the first half. The second half, Bachmeier kind of turns into a different quarterback because he goes away from the successful mode of play in the first half where he's under control, he's calm, he gets stressed, and he starts trying to put things up. This is a quarterback who has the talent to play on the next level, but if he wants to get there to be a team that if he wants to be a player that teams want to take a chance on, or who are looking at him and not having to take a chance, they look at a player that they can put on their roster and be successful with, he has to figure out a way to breathe, calm down, and go out in the second half and play the same way he has in the first half. And I think that, that is emblematic of a new coaching staff and of Bachmeier adjusting to this new offense. I think that we're going to see improvements through Bachmeier through this season, and I really hope he sticks around for next year, because I think that we could see a very, very, very special player in Bachmeier if he can stick through this season and come out. Remember Jared Zabransky in 2004? 2004, he looked great, really good. 2005, Jared Zabransky in 2005, just completely off. He had some sparks, some talent levels. He really showed some great play moments, but overall, making the wrong calls, interceptions, overthrows, really kind of coming down the stretch in games, really kind of went off the rail. But that is the same way with Bachmeier. 2019, really, really good player. 2020, not so much. I think we would have seen a different level of play with the COVID, but this season, very much off in his play style. But I think that we could see a Jared Zabransky's type of resurgence in performance next season if he can stick around for his final year and actually go through the full training offseason with this coaching staff, really developing himself. Bachmeier is the key, I think, to Boise State's future success here, or he can be a key. This coaching staff is the key, but he could be a real foundation that Boise State can build on if he can improve his second half performance, and I think we'll see that as we go through the second half of the season. I'm going to move on to defense here. The video is already pushing longer than I wanted it to, but we're going to move, before we move on, so like I said, tale of two halves, but the one positive that we can really take out of this performance, besides the fact that Boise State, I thought, was moving the ball pretty well, if not hurt by those turnovers, one of the positives that we can really take out of this is that Boise State seems to have found a bit of a running game. Boise State had 107 yards rushing between their three main running backs in Helani, Cyrus, and Van Buren. And like I said, Helani was looking really good before he came out, but Cyrus was able to pick up the pace in the second half. Van Buren had a 22-yard rush. Cyrus almost had a run for a touchdown where he was weaving and just running through defenders. So Boise State's running backs are running much more aggressively than they did in the first half, despite the offensive line still struggling. Boise State is starting to find its running game. I still think that this is a pass-centric offense, and it needs to stay that way, but I do think that Boise State is finding a way that they can mix in the running game and have success with it, even if it's not necessarily a completely balanced approach. And that was, I think, in the second half, there was, the fact that Boise State was down and the turnovers that happened, Boise State really kind of went away from that in the second half, much more towards the passing game. But I think that situationally here, there was an opportunity against Nevada that Boise State did not exploit as well as they could have. I think that Boise State could have had a much bigger impact in the running game against the Nevada rush defense that was struggling and that was all geared up for the pass. And I think, again, emblematic of a new coaching staff struggling to make those corrections, to recognize that opportunity and that advantage. And this is a coaching staff that is going to start recognizing those much earlier as the season progresses and going into next year. But I think that Boise State missed an opportunity here to really run the ball down Nevada's throat, which I think would have opened up some opportunities in the passing game, allowed Bachmeier to kind of calm down. Maybe that's how Boise State fixes things in the second half, is try to take some of the pressure off of Bachmeier. I'm not saying go UCF style where you run the ball every play for nothing, but try to, don't approach the second half with Bachmeier like he's a seasoned quarterback coming into that second half. But he is playing the second half like he's a completely fresh quarterback coming into the game. So Boise State should use the second half to allow Bachmeier to get back into the game, short passes, screens, try to get the running backs involved if they can. Allow Bachmeier to settle into the second half so he can get into once Bachmeier gets into rhythm, once he gets on fire, he is on fire. Once he sparks himself, he's on fire. So Boise State needs to start using that second half to allow Bachmeier to get back into rhythm before they start trying to put it all on their star quarterback. But like I said, running game was a true positive in this one. First time that those three have combined for over 100 yards. And I hope that was not just because Nevada wasn't ready for it. I hope that is representative of a running game that is improving going forward. I think that Boise State can definitely be a lot closer in some of these games that otherwise look like they might lose if they're able to get that running game to be a contributing member of this offense versus a liability like it has been in the past games. But the real story on this one, those three turnovers led directly to 13 points. So 3 scores by Nevada. Boise State lost this one 31-41. You take away those 13 points, Boise State wins. And that's not even counting the fact that Boise State would probably have scored on some of those drives that they had turnovers on. So really, the luck of the draw, that 50-50, ended up going against Boise State, and that is the main reason that Boise State lost this one, because the negative plays in the first half that should have been critically negative weren't, and the second half they were. Boise State ended up having the first half catch up to them in the second one here, and that is the reason that Boise State lost this game, is because everything that could go wrong in the second half did go wrong, and they ended up being out of it there in the second half. So we're going to move on here to the defense real quick and the special teams, and then 3 keys again. We're going to wrap up. So just real quick overlooking, I really wanted to, I think the main reason Boise State lost this game was because of their offense. Sorry, I forgot to grade them. C+ for the offense, some A+ moments, but a C+, especially in the second half, probably a D performance in the second half there. Lack of sense of urgency. Failed fourth down. I didn't even mention this one. Failed fourth down conversion on a terrible play call. It was creative, but Boise State has not been able to run the ball successfully, or I said they started showing a little bit better running game in this one, but Boise State, their main strength has been in the passing game. Boise State should not have tried to call a running play on fourth down there. It was never, no kind of running play was ever going to work on that one. Probably not even an RPO. Boise State needed to go with some kind of pass on that, and they didn't. So, like I said, A+ moments, but C+ or D- overall performance in the second half with 3 turnovers, failed fourth down conversion, and complete lack of urgency on that final drive there that allowed Nevada to come back in, to not come back into this one, but to maintain, to come back into this one with the turnovers, but then also to maintain that lead and to maintain that win with additional turnovers and a failed drive on that last drive. All right, so defense overall had some bad moments. They had some real kind of, giving up some big plays, especially in the running game in the second half. But overall, this defense really kind of corrected itself and saved itself in the second half here. So Boise State, overall, I'm giving them a B-, and that to most of you is going to seem high, but let me explain it here. So Boise State in the first half gave up 212 yards passing and 18 yards rushing. In the second half, that was flipped. Nevada, great adjustments by Nevada. The coaching staff here, this is a seasoned coaching staff for Nevada with an amazing head coach. So this is a Nevada coaching staff that was, they're at another level right now from this brand new, fresh coaching staff for Boise State. They're at a level of this Boise State coaching staff will probably be at in a couple of years, but this is the Nevada coaching staff that they know their players, they know their team, they know each other, and they were able to make the adjustments. And one of those adjustments that they saw was some opportunities in the running game. Boise State very good against the running game early because Nevada wasn't really pushing it. Second half, 18 yards rushing the first half, 112 yards allowed in the second half, which included 2 rushing scores, long scores, a 12-yard and a 22-yard rushing by Tuatua there in the second half. 51 yards passing in the second half. Nevada really kind of went away from it, but Boise State's secondary, which I thought was struggling to a certain extent, and 212 yards passing from a quarterback like Carson Strong is not necessarily an example of a completely absent defensive passing game. But the passing game, the secondary really stepped up in the second half, took away those passing opportunities, was playing much better in the second half there, which forced Nevada to the run a little bit, even though I think they were leaning in that direction anyway. But only 51-yard passing. I mean, that's why Boise State gets a B- in this one, is those adaptions in the secondary. That's one of the reasons. They held Carson Strong, who is, by all accounts, a first-round potential draft pick, to only 263 yards passing, a player who'd had 2 300-yard passing games in his first 2 games, and had only been held to under 300 against Big 12 defense in Kansas State. Boise State was able to play to that same level, as far as the stats anyway, and hold him to only 263 yards passing, just like Kansas State did. They also held him to 1 touchdown, which is the least amount of touchdowns he's had outside of the Kansas State game, where he also only had 1 touchdown. So this defense really stepped up in the second half defensively, for the secondary at least. Really stepped up and forced Nevada to that run game. Unfortunately, Boise State has been exposed all year in the run game, and that came true in the second half when Boise State gave up 112 yards rushing. They ended up giving up 130, which is still less than they have pretty much all season. I mean, 255 against UCF, 246 against Oklahoma State, 235 against Utah State. So 130 yards rushing is still an improvement, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough of an improvement because 112 of that coming in the second half it turned out to be insurmountable for an offense that was struggling with turnovers already to be able to overcome. So Boise State's defense, unfortunately, there, especially in the third quarter, gave up 18 points in the third quarter there, which ended up being key to the win here by Nevada. Those 18 points in the third quarter, most of them off of turnovers, so you can't blame the defense as much on this one. The offense is primarily responsible. Those turnovers set up Nevada with great field position that the defense was not able to correct for. But 18 points in the third quarter still comes on the defense. But the fact that they were able to hold them to 51 yards passing in the second half, and most of that 112 came in the third quarter, is very much representative of the fact that this defense was making the corrections they needed to, and we saw that in the fourth quarter. While the third quarter might have been a little bit of a disaster defensively, the fourth quarter was amazing. Boise State, just towards the end of the third, then moving to the fourth, had 3 huge defensive stops. They had a massive 3-and-out defensive stand after the failed fourth down conversion that Boise State attempted. They had another huge defensive stop after the fumble that forced Nevada into a field goal when they were basically already in field goal range. They forced them into a field goal, and then the second fumble, that is. And then after the interception, they had a massive fourth fourth quarter stop there that actually caused Nevada to lose yards and forced them into a punt. When they had started in Boise State's territory, they forced Nevada to punt, really gave the offense an opportunity to get in this one and win this in the fourth quarter. Now, unfortunately, that third quarter performance meant the game was out of reach for an offense that was so turnover prone in the second half. So unfortunately, the combination of the offensive errors and the defense not being able to make the stands necessarily that they needed to in the second half doomed this performance. But huge performance on those stops in the fourth quarter, where if Boise State can string together a little bit more consistency, especially there in the first half where they allowed 212 yards passing, if the secondary can become a little bit more consistent, if the fourth quarter defense can make their presence felt throughout the entire game. That's why I talk about this is a Boise State team that is just moments away from greatness. This is a Boise State team that is just a few player changes, a few new recruits in, a few new defensive style of calling, which will come, few new defensive play calls, which will come as this defensive staff learns how this game in Boise State at the FBS level, learns what the players they have and what works. A few tweaks here and there and an infusion of new players is going to make this Boise State defense dominant in the next couple of years here. So we are seeing sparks of that. We're seeing aggressiveness. 4 sacks in this one, the most sacks that Nevada has allowed this season. 4 sacks might not seem huge, but when this is a Nevada team with a good offensive line and a great quarterback, and even against Kansas State, they didn't allow this many sacks. Boise State got 4 sacks in this one. The player of the game for me defensively is Banya. He had 3 of those sacks. He had 2 sacks against UCF, and he had 3 sacks in this one. Banya really needs to be. I said this after the UCF game, and I'm saying it now again. He needs to be a bigger part of this defense going forward. He is a key player that can infuse so much energy into this defense. I mean, the way that he goes after the quarterback is incredible. Maybe not as efficient in the run game, but he is amazing at stopping the quarterbacks. And a defensive line that has struggled to put pressure on the quarterback, he is a key, I think, to Boise State being able to correct that going forward. But 3 sacks in this one, held Carson Strong to only under 300 yards passing, 263, only 51 in the second half. 3 huge fourth quarter stops, or 1 third quarter, but 2 huge fourth quarter stops and 1 late in the third to give Boise State a chance in this one. That's what earns the B- rating for Boise State versus a C or something beyond that. The defense could play stronger, 41 points up. That's gonna look bad. But the fact that they held them to 130 yards rushing, which is the least that they've done so far, besides the UTEP game, but this is a much different caliber opponent. A very good Nevada team held them to 130 yards rushing, 263 yards passing, and then all those stops and the sacks. That gets Boise State this B- here. It's a defense that I think is a positive to take out of this one. If it wasn't for those turnovers offensively, they probably would have held Nevada definitely would have held them to under 30 points, probably would have held them to 24 or 28 points, something like that. But this is a defense that, especially the way that they opened up this season, is making huge strides. I think we're going to see a much different performance out of this defense towards the end of the season as we start seeing them kind of showing us what they can do going forward into next year. We're going to start seeing sparks, small signs of that dominant defense that is going to be so dominant in the next couple of years. We're going to start seeing what they can truly do here towards the end of the season. They're moving in the right direction. They are a positive out of this game with a lot of negatives in it. If the offense hadn't had so many turnovers, this would have been a win for Boise State, and they would have been able to look back and credit that, I think, to a big part to their defense. But unfortunately, like I said, what could go wrong did go wrong, and a tale of luck in the second half really kind of doomed this performance. So special teams real quick, B- on this one, just because there wasn't anything really that won the game, special teams, obviously lost, but gave Boise State. There wasn't anything really here that critically doomed Boise State in this one, but there really also wasn't anything that necessarily was exceptional in the special teams performance. Kicking game was fine. Damas made both of his kicks, and it was 4-4 on point after attempts. The return game was okay. Shakir on the punt return game was amazing. He had a 40-yard return, which was the longest return Boise State has had, aside from that touchdown, but has the longest return, for Shakir is what I meant to say, longest return for Shakir this season, and very, very explosive. And then C.T. Thomas even had a strong return, only for 25 yards, but was able to break some tackles to make it 25. And the return coverage was fine. They did allow a big return after the second score for Boise State that allowed Nevada to kind of build some momentum there to allow them to answer with a score. So that was a little bit of a letdown there. The two big negatives for this one that takes it out of the A range is the very bad punt by Vasquez. He had a 57-yard punt, which kind of, makes an even B performance for him, but he had a shank that was 27 yards that set Nevada up, and they were able to then score on that drive. Defense gave up some big plays. That was the one with the 22-yard rushing score by Tuatua there, but the shank and setting up Nevada, I believe they set up, a 60-yard drive. So setting them up at their own 40, put the Boise State defense on their heels already, and that really was part of, in a game that there was a lot of different parts responsible for the loss. That was partially responsible as well, allowing Nevada to go down and get that score. And then also Boise State, on actually a very, very good onside kick, was not able to recover. They had an opportunity for it. I really thought that they were going to get it. The announcers went, whoa, and they thought that Boise State had got the ball, unable to recover the kick. Onside kicks, one of those things that is really hard to get anyway. Boise State has not recovered a lot of them historically, although we all remember that game against Colorado State where Cedric Wilson was able to get that recovery. It was amazing. But this is onside kicks, can't really necessarily blame it on the hands team. It's less than a 50-50 shot where they're going to get it anyway. And the rules are geared towards the recovering team, the return team managing to get that recovery. So can't necessarily blame them completely on that, but a failed onside kick is a mark against the special teams unit. One thing I am going to say, that Boise State only averaged, despite a good kick return here for 25 yards by C.T. Thomas, Boise State's only averaged in this game 19.8 yards per return and has not looked good as far as the kick return game goes overall this season. Las Avery Williams has really hurt Boise State in all phases of the return game, but they really haven't found that answer, that kind of player who can electrify the return game. And Boise State is starting off a lot of these drives inside the 25. A lot of them are inside the 20. Boise State, I think, would be, for now, until they can find an answer, or maybe at least till they can lull the return coverage into a sense of false security, until they can find an answer, Boise State would probably be better off fair catching a lot of these balls. The new fair catch rule allows you to fair catch outside of the goal line. I believe it's if you're inside of your own 10. I think that's the rule. If you're inside of your own 10, you can fair catch the ball. Boise State needs to start taking advantage of that, because starting off inside, sub their own 20 is inside their own red zone is really kind of hurting a Boise State offense that is already at times struggling to find that spark to get themselves going. So especially in the second half when the offense is already kind of struggling to get going, Boise State would probably be better off fair catching some of these. The more balls that they fair catch, the less times that the return coverage thinks that you're going to return it, and then you can surprise them with a return and try and maybe get more yards than you are right now. So that's probably, I think, an answer there to kind of fix some of the return woes here until Boise State can recruit a player of Avery Williams type caliber again, who has that special spark, that once in a generation kind of return spark that can just go out there and allow you to make a big impact and get past the 25, which makes a return worth it. All right, so that's offense, defense, special teams. Let's go real quick over the three keys to the game. This is going to be real fast here. So first one, incorporate the RPO. Didn't happen, so it's getting an F on this one just because it didn't happen. I believe Boise State had a couple of design draws. They had 6 sacks, so Bachmeier carried the ball 10 times. 6 of those were sacks. I believe 3 of them were scrambles that he was able to get back to the line of scrimmage, but only, as far as I saw, one impactful quarterback option. They did a quarterback option where Bachmeier kept the ball and was able to convert for first on a third down. On a key third down that I believe they ended up being able to go down and score on that. So that was an impactful moment. I would like to see more of that. Bachmeier rushed for 46 yards last week against Utah State. It really kind of opened up this run game and gave Boise State a new weapon in their playbook. I think Boise State could have used that more effectively here in a run game that had holes, had openings anyway, that the running backs were already finding success. Mixing the RPO might have allowed Boise State to continue to exploit those openings in the run game, and might have also opened up other opportunities in the run game for Boise State to potentially pitch it on an option, or for Nevada to not be able to key in on the running back because they know the quarterback can carry it as well. So I think that Boise State really needed to incorporate the RPO. I think that was definitely something that was missing in this one. It could have definitely calmed Bachmeier down a little bit when he was throwing the ball all over the place and missing. So Boise State not incorporating the RPO, I think, was significant in this one. Bachmeier ended up being responsible for negative 68 yards due to those sacks. But I think that if we'd incorporated the RPO on this one, the game could have had a different feel for it, which might have ended up being in a win. All right, second key, get tight ends more involved. C+ on this one, because Boise State, it wasn't really an intentional push to get the tight ends involved in this one. And there were opportunities. I mean, Raftel played great. He had 4 receptions for 63 yards, including a very long catch for 15 yards on a 2nd and 23 after Bachmeier had been sacked to kind of set Boise State up for a chance there, even though they didn't end up being able to do anything with that drive. But Raftel was playing very, very well. Hopper made an amazing catch for 11 yards on a play that Bachmeier got hit. The ball just went way up in the air, and it shouldn't have been caught. And Hopper somehow managed to come down with it, catch that ball, maintain that drive. I believe that was on the very long scoring drive that Boise State had. Managed to keep the drive alive, and it wasn't intended for him, but he managed to catch that ball and keep the drive alive. So Boise State's tight ends are proving that they're key makers. We already know Riley Smith is a playmaker, and surprising, Riley Smith actually had no catches in this one. The first game that he has not had any catches, despite having catch in each of the 4 games previous to this one. So no catch to Riley Smith. Raftel proving that he can be a key playmaker in the passing game. And then Hopper showing some real awareness to really go up and get that ball, some real kind of athletic ability there, showing that he can be impactful in the passing game as well. The tight ends proving my key that they can be impactful but not being used as such. Boise State really needs to start incorporating their tight ends into this passing game, especially early in the second half when Bachmeier is trying to establish a little bit of rhythm. Some nice easy throws to the tight ends, who are usually involved in the blocking game and usually able to jump out and get open. Some nice easy throws, some short throws to the tight ends will sell Bachmeier down, get him that completion, pass completion feeling, so that he can then use that to spark himself and be the playmaker, the caliber playmaker that we already know that he is and that he is showing in the first half. But C+ overall, because it just really wasn't intentional. No passes to Riley Smith. Lucky to get a pass off to Hopper, despite Raftel having a very good day. All right, and then kicking game come through. This one, not gradable. So NA, because it really wasn't needed. Boise State lost by 10 points in this one. Damas made the kick that he was called on to make. Boise State, few less turnovers in this one, and maybe a little bit more energy on that final drive. Might have made the kicking game become key in this one, and it certainly looked like it was shaping out that way in the first half with a 20-21 score. It definitely looked like the kicking game was going to be a winner in this one. Ended up not being in the final score there, but it's nice. I guess another silver lining from this is it's nice to have a loss to Nevada that you can't blame on the kicker, because when you have a game like that 2010 game where it's a team effort, but the game was lost on the kicks there. It feels different. It feels like you lost a game that you should have won. This one, total team collapse, especially offensively, end up losing the game. It hurts, it stings, but it doesn't feel like the 2010 game. And I think that's because we didn't have the same level of hope that we did in that first game. But if it had come down to the kicking game, I have full confidence in Damas, an amazing kicker for Boise State. I believe he would have come through for us. And with a lot of really good teams, top 10 team in BYU, a former top 25 team. I think we'll get back to the top 25 by the time we play them in Fresno State. An undefeated San Diego State team that I believe just jumped in the top 25. So top 25 San Diego State team. Very good Air Force and Wyoming teams. Both Air Force might be ranked in the top 25 by the time we play them. Probably won't, but they could, and they're going to be very good. There's going to be a lot of very close games coming down stretch, especially if Boise State improves, as I think they will. There's going to be a lot of very close games, and the kicking game is going to be huge in that one. So I'm pushing 52 minutes. Part of that was the initial 13 minutes of setting the tune for the season. It's kind of like 2 videos combined in one for this purpose, so I'm okay with the 52 minutes on this. But thank you for watching my video. We've got a big game coming up against BYU. That video is probably going to come out a little bit late because I am still going to be traveling. Probably look to have that video out on Thursday versus my usual Wednesday time frame on that. But a huge game against BYU. Boise State This is a season that is not going as Boise State fans had hoped, but it is a Boise State, like I said, when I said, what does Boise State still have to play for in one of my videos that I talked about, I think it was after the loss to Oklahoma State, I said that Boise State can still win a conference championship. That they can still do. This was a loss, a Mountain West loss, but it wasn't to a team within their division, which would have been critical. So they would, as long as they beat everyone in their division and don't necessarily lose as many games as the other teams in their division, and own those head-to-heads, this is a team that can still get to the Mountain West Championship, a team that still isn't necessarily completely out of having control of their own destiny for getting the Mountain West Championship. They can set themselves up for next season, which they're already doing, and this is a revenge year. Didn't get that opportunity to beat Nevada, but they still have some revenge. They need to get a win, a revenge win against BYU, who's beaten them, a revenge win against Fresno State, and a revenge win against San Diego State, all teams that beat them the last time that Boise State played. So Boise State still has those revenge opportunities, and you know what? We haven't been able to play this role in a while, really since I think it was which was the season that Fresno State was ranked really high. I think it was 2002 or 2003 I think it was 2002 we went up and we upset them there. Ryan Dinwiddie at quarterback, really upset a really good season for Fresno State when they were looking to make a play for the New Year's Six. So we haven't been able to be in that role. It's kind of fun to be the team that goes and upsets everybody else's season for a change. When you don't come in necessarily expecting as much and you get a chance to go be a Hawaii and go and upset a New Year's Six potential season like Fresno State. Boise State can be that team. We can be the team that makes everybody hate us in the Mountain West. We can be that team that goes up and upsets other teams' season, which still feels good. So Boise State still has a lot to look forward to this season, especially the Mountain West Championship, which is still heavily in play. And then Boise State fans overall, give this team time, and they will live up to the expectations we have for them. Got to stay on the bandwagon. No jumping off the bandwagon for Boise State fans. It's been a long time since we've struggled, but you know what? Great teams grow out of adversity. And this is a team that's really been, while playing okay, has really been playing for mediocrity the last few seasons. Boise State, if they want to get up to the level of exceptionalism that they have been in the past, I think they need to face a little adversity to find out what their true core is, find that core and build on it. This is a Boise State team that's going to come out this season so much stronger than they have been in past years. The ceiling is incredible high. The future is bright. I'm excited for Boise State going into next year. But there's still a lot to play for this season. I'm excited for next week's matchup, or this week's, matchup against BYU and what Boise State can do the next of the year. So let's go out, let's beat BYU, or at least be competitive in that one. We'll see what we look at in my preview of the game video, which will be coming out here in a couple of days. But I'm excited for Boise State's chances this season for that Mountain West Conference. I'm excited to see what this team can do as we continue to see them grow and develop under a very exceptional coach in Andy Avalos, who's going to be able to get Boise State back to the level of success we've seen in past years for Boise State. So thank you for watching this video, and as always, make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, go Big Blue.